Hello everyone, welcome back again to another sewing tutorial on Jowins channel. In today's video guys, we'll be learning how to make a bustier dress. The good thing about this style illustration is that you can either make it as a bustier top and a high waist skirt, or a bustier gown as it is in today's video. If this is what you're willing to watch guys, kindly watch this video to the end, like, share, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. So guys, without wasting much of your time, let's get right into the video. So guys, on the pattern paper you can clearly see the bust line indicated at 10.5 inches. I'll simply go ahead and also mark the waist line indicated at 17 inches, and then the hip line indicated at 21.5 inches. You can go below this, depends on where you want to place your to create your basket effect. Okay, so I'll simply go ahead and also mark my under bust measurement, which is indicated at 14 inches, as you can clearly see on the pattern paper. So the next thing guys for us to do is to mark the shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So I'll go ahead and mark 7.5, and then I'll add additional half an inch on it, making it 8 inches. Okay, that will be for the sleeve attachment. Okay, then I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and then I'll link it up to the neck width at 3 inches. Okay, so I'll use my pattern master, or if you have a straight ruler you can use it to link these 2 points together. So guys, having done this, the next thing I'll simply do is to establish my armhole, which is 18 divided by 2. I'll go ahead and mark 9 inches. Okay, like I always say that the armhole establishes the chest line. Okay, then I'll simply go ahead and mark the midpoint of this line to enable me establish the armhole curve. I'll move in by 0.5 inches, and then I'll place the quarter of my bust measurement on the chest line. As you can see, it varies for different clients or different persons. Then I'll simply go ahead and establish the curve with this measurement. Okay, so just watch me. I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to do. Okay guys, so the next thing I'll simply do is to establish the neckline for this dress. Okay, so I came down by 6 inches on the armhole, and on the center front I'll come down by 8 inches. Okay, so then I'll clearly use the curvy part of my pattern master, and then I'll link up these 2 points together, as you can see. Okay, so we're good. This is the neckline for the dress illustration. Okay, so guys, the next thing we'll simply do is to contour the over bust and the under bust, and what we need to do is to place our half bust band measurement on the pattern, which is your nipple to nipple measurement. For me, I have 8 divided by 2. I have 4 inches. So I'll simply mark it on the bust line, the under bust, waist, and the hip line. So on the bust line, I came down by half an inch. On the under bust, I clearly marked 1.5 inches on both sides. I did the same thing for the waistline, 1.5 inches on both sides, and the hip line as well. And I linked all the points together. So the next thing I'll simply do is to contour it towards the bust point. Okay, as you can see me doing, I'm using the curvy part of my pattern master to establish that bust like curve, tending towards the bust line for the under bust contouring. Okay, so guys, for the on the chest line, on the armhole rather, I'll come down by 1 inch. Okay, I'll simply mark 1 inch, and then I'll link this point towards the bust point. Okay, it's more like having a demarcation on the front pattern. We have the first demarcation, which is the yoke. We have the second demarcation, and then we have the third and the fourth, of which much later I'll indicate it. So I simply linked that point, 1 inch mark towards the bust point, and then I blended it up to the center front. Okay, still on the bust line. Okay, so I'll simply go ahead and establish the yoke. Okay, you can decide to use a straight line or a curvy line to achieve this. It depends on the nature of neckline that you want. Okay, so I'll clearly highlight the yoke as 1, the second part of the front pattern 2, and we have 3 and 4. Okay, so the next thing we can now do is to place your horizontal body measurement. As we know that on the bust line, I'll be marking the quarter of my bust measurement, same as the chest line. So I'll mark it there. You can go ahead and mark the quarter of your own bust measurement, and I'll simply add additional 1.5 inches for the seam allowance. You can mark 2 inches to be on the safe side, but I simply use to 1.5 inches. Okay, so I'll do the same for the bust line. I'll add 1.5 inches. Okay, then on the under bust line, I'll simply mark the quarter of my under bust. Okay, and then I'll add additional I'll replace the dart intake. I meant to say the dart intake is 3 inches. As you can clearly see, we did 1.5 inches on both sides. So guys, then I'll simply add the seam allowance, which is 1.5 inches, just like I did for the bust line. So just do this, correspondingly, both on the waistline, you add the quarter of your waist. On the hip, you do the same. You add the quarter of your hip circumference, and then you replace your dart intake, okay, which is 3 inches. And then you add your seam allowance of 1.5 inches. Okay, this 1.5 inches is not a standard. You can make it 2 inches, okay, to be on the safe side, like I explained earlier. Okay, so 1.5 inches was what I used for this particular tutorial. Okay, so I'll just do this, and then I'll link the points together. Okay, I'll draw a straight line, not necessarily a straight line. As you can see, the lines, the dots on the horizontal line is not straight, but I'll try as much as possible to blend the lines in such a way that they will all meet each other. Okay, so guys, this is what we have. So this is the pattern for the front. So I'll go ahead and cut this out, and then we'll proceed to the next stage. So guys, as you can see, I've cut out the pattern. This is what it looks like at the moment. We're not through yet, so you can see that I closed up the dart, okay, to enable me create the basque effect. Okay, so if you look at the style illustration on the thumbnail, the basque effect is tending towards the hip. Okay, but because I don't have enough pattern, if you want your basque effect to really extend downwards, just make sure that you come really down below 21.5. Depends on what you want. Just take your own measurements. So I'll just move up a bit by half an inch above the waistline, and then I'll use the curvy part of my curvy ruler to establish this curve. It's not a sharp straight curve, it's kind of a curvy, it's curvy at the center front. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and cut out the excess pattern, as you can see me doing already. Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and remove the masking tape, and then we'll clearly see the outcome of our pattern drafting. Okay, so this is the front pattern, so we'll simply proceed to the back. Okay, so for the back pattern, guys, we have the chest line and the waist line. Okay, so it's not going to be extending down to the hip. The back is going to stop on the waistline. So I'll go ahead and place my shoulder measurement. This is clearly what we have done for the front pattern, so I may not be explaining in depth. Okay, but for the sake of beginners, I will just clearly explain. So this is the shoulder slope, and then we're going to take the armhole just like I did for the front. The armhole is 9 inches. So guys, I'm going to be erasing the chest line. Okay, it's a mistake. I actually placed the chest line on the wrong part. Like I always said, that the armhole establishes the chest line, and the chest line fell on 9 inches. You can see that the chest line I placed there is rightly above the 9 inches, so it's an oversight, so please pardon my mistake. So I'll go ahead and place the quarter of my bust circumference on the chest line, the newly established chest line. And then, okay, sorry, I'm trying to ensure that the lines are matching on the chest line, which is 8 inches. Okay, so I'll go ahead and draw a straight line. Okay, so I'm trying to establish the chest line first of all before creating the armhole curve. Okay, so this is the chest line. And then what I'll simply do next is to establish the armhole curve. Okay, so just like I did for the previous, you get the midpoint. So the midpoint is 4.5 like we know initially. And then I'll go ahead and place the quarter of my bust circumference first. It's very important that you use the quarter of your bust circumference to establish your armhole so that you don't have any issues when you're trying to place your sleeve. Okay, so I'll go ahead and mark this out, link it to the midpoint of the armhole curve. So this is basically how you draft the armhole curve for the back pattern. Okay guys, so guys, the next thing I'll simply do is to establish the neckline for the back. Okay, so on the chest line I'll just come down a bit by half an inch. Okay, and then I'll link the 2 points together. Okay, so you can choose to make it a straight line, or you can choose to make it a bit curvy or a bit slopey at the back. So the preference or the choice is for you to make. Okay guys, so this is the neckline for the back, and then I'll go ahead and create the yoke, okay, for the back bodice. Okay, so you can either make it straight or you can either make it curvy, so it all depends on what you want. So guys, this is the yoke for the back. Okay, so I'll go ahead and place the waist dart. So we'll simply use a waist dart for the back. We won't be contouring. You don't contour the back, you only contour the front because that's where you have your bust. So I will just place a simple waist dart at the back. So I'm going to be marking half an inch on both sides on the waistline, and then I'll link it up to the chest line. So guys, this is it for the back. This is the waistline. So the next thing I'll do is to place the horizontal measurement, which is the waist circumference divided by 2. I'm going to be marking divided by 4, the waist quarter of your waist circumference. I meant to say, please. So your waist measurement divided by 4, you'll mark it there. Then you replace your dart intake. The dart intake is 1 inch. Then you add your 1.5 inch seam allowance. Okay, remember 1.5 inches seam allowance. Remember that's what we did. And on the chest line, we already have the quarter of our bust circumference there. So I'll go ahead and add 1.5 inches. And then I'll link up the 2 points together. The points on the chest line and then the points on the waistline. Okay, so guys, what I'll simply do next is to snatch the back panel, the back body. So I'll move in there by 1.5 inches. Okay, simply because I'll be using a Modesty panel for this. Okay, so I'll snatch it by 1.5 inches. So on a spread, you should know that we should be expecting like 3 inches. Okay, but this is clearly 1.5 inches. This is where I'll be placing the loops. Okay, so there's nothing much here. You can go ahead and cut open your dart if you wish, or you can go ahead and just, you know, stitch it in the form of a waist dart. So it all depends on you, but well, the preference is yours to make, the choice is yours to make. I think it's all about creativity, trying to explore different options and know what works best for you. Okay, so this is the panel. I've cut the front bodice. I've used the pattern to cut the main fabric and also use it to cut the lining. So this is the front and the back panel. And this is the lining we'll be making use of. I also use the same pattern to cut out the lining. This is a bias tape I'll be making use of, and you can see a boning there and the zip. Okay, I'll be using the bias tape, for the dress, the style illustration. So guys, as you can clearly see, I've joined the panels together using an interfacing. Okay, this is very important. After joining the panels, you can see that I relax the seam. So it's best that you make sure you notch. After notching, you relax your seam. It just helps the bodice to relax properly, as you can see. Okay, so you know that the contouring is just from the bust line below. Okay, so this is the yoke. I simply used an organza for the yoke, and I lined it up with the bias tape to create that effect. Okay, so it's most likely that the fabric there is having that effect, but I just wanted to create that effect for my own style. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use this bias tape to line up the center, front, and the bust area. Okay, basically where we have the joinings. Okay, which is the bust area, the center, front, and you can go ahead and explore more options by lining it on the side front. Okay, you can line it up there, but I won't be doing it. I will just simply line it on the bust area and on the center front. So this is it. I've placed my bias there. Okay, I've placed my bias there. So the next thing I'll simply do is to place the second layer of the front bodice, which is the second part before you have the yoke. I'll just go ahead and place it appropriately. I will ensure that I get the center front. Make sure you get the center front, is very important, so that one side won't be longer than the other. And also get the center front of the main bodice, which is the larger portion down, the larger part of the bodice. Just stitch it, grip it with a pin. You secure it with a pin, I meant to say, and then you just pin it all through till you get to the end before you stitch it. So try and ensure that you do this so that you don't have any form of mistake or cutting out excess when one side is longer than the other. You get, so for balance, I would advise that you secure with a pin first. So the next thing I'll simply do is to place my yoke. I'll also secure this with a pin. So I want to suggest that while stitching the yoke, or while attaching the yoke to the second part of the front bodice, stitch it by 0.25, simply because if you stitch it by 0.5 inches, when you want to do your closure with your lining, you may eat deep into your fabric. So I'll suggest that when you're gripping your yoke to your main fabric, as I am doing now, so when you're stitching it with your machine, just stitch it by 1/4 inch first. Okay, so I've taken it to my sewing machine and I've stitched it. Okay, so this is what we have. Then I'll now go ahead and use the lining as a closure. So now you can now stitch it properly by 0.5 inches. So you can basically understand the point I'm trying to make. Had it been I stitched the yoke by 1/2 inch, probably by the time I'm trying to do the neck closure, I may be eating deep and then maybe utilizing like 0.75 instead of the 0.5 inches, which was the seam allowance we established for this pattern. So guys, I've placed my neckline, so I'll go ahead and open it up, and then I will top stitch it. It's very important so that the neckline can relax properly. Okay, so the next thing I would do is to place it this way, right sides facing each other. I'll go ahead and stitch up the sides. Okay, but I won't be stitching the neckline with the way it is now, but by the time I flip it to the other side, I will top stitch it. Okay, so that it will be easier for me to attach my sleeve. So guys, this is the back panel. This is the back panel, and as you can see, I've placed the yoke and I've used the lining to turn it up. So I'll go ahead and use my bias, create my loops. I'll create my loops for it, and then I'm going to place the loops, okay, with the strip I was holding earlier on. So the next thing I'll do is to take a measurement of my panel, the panel I'll be using for this dress tutorial, I'll go ahead and take the full measurement of what I have there. So guys, I have 7 inches. As you can see, this is 7 inches. So I'll go ahead and cut out my panel by 7 inches, by 6 inches, but I'll add 1 inch seam allowance to enable me close up for above and below. Okay, so 7 inches is what we'll be using for the Modesty panel. Remember, we're working with 6 inches, but 7 inches is what we'll cut out. So guys, what we'll simply do next is to pass the boning through the boning channel. Okay, so I'll just pass this through and then I'll stop, cut it at 1 inch before I get to the end. Okay, so I'm trying to fill the distance to ensure that I have like 1 inch reduction of the total length. Okay, so I'll just push this to get to the end, simply because I wouldn't want to allow the bonings get into the seam allowance. So I'll do this for the other part, which is the bustier area. So I won't be piping this directly to the end for the bustier part. I'll stop on the under bust, still the total length reduced by 1 inch. I'll be doing the same on this other part. I'll stop on the under bust. Okay, so the next thing to do is to join the upper part to the lower part of the dress. So this is the back panel. Okay, so I'll be placing it. The seam allowance is 1 inch. Okay, so I'll just join it and then stitch it by the seam allowance of 1 inch. This is the front panel. I've also done the joining of the upper bodice to the lower part of the dress. Okay, and as you can see, this is what we have. This is the back part. Okay, and then this is the panel. Okay, try to stabilize your panel. It's very important that you stabilize your panel. If you're using a lighter fabric for your panel, please use an interfacing to ensure that it's kind of stabilize the panel from drifting up and down. It's very important that you stabilize your panel. Okay, so I'll be placing the fabric, the dress I meant to say, right side facing each other. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and join this part together by 1 inch. I'll place the zipper allowance and then I'll close the shoulders. So the next thing I simply did was to attach the sleeve. Okay, I will be dropping a tutorial on this trumpet sleeve, but because of time, I didn't want to utilize so much time for this tutorial. So I'll be attaching the sleeve and then I'll go ahead and close up the side by my body measurement, because this dress is basically mine. So I used my body measurements for the side. So guys, this is it. This is the outcome of the dress. Okay, if you find it so helpful, please don't forget to hit the like button and most importantly, subscribe to Jowins Fashion Ville. Thank you so much guys for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Have a nice day.